Narcissists don't care if they give pleasure to someone. They are autoerotic. They are focused on themselves as the source of erotic pleasure. They masturbate with other people's bodies. End of story. Inevitably, the sexuality of patients with personality disorders is thwarted and stunted. The somatic narcissist flaunts his sexual conquests, parades his possessions, exhibits his muscles. It is easy is because the narcissist of both types, somatic and cerebral, is autoerotic. In other words, he finds himself as the most exciting, arousing sexual object. Somatic narcissists and the psychopath use their partner's bodies to masturbate with, and their sexual conquests serve merely to prop up their wavering self-confidence in the case of the somatic narcissist, by a physiological need in the case of the psychopath. By a physiological need in the case of the psychopath. Somatic narcissist and psychopath have no sexual playmates, only sexual playthings. Having conquered the target, they discard it, withdraw, and move on heartlessly. Sex with the somatic narcissist, pyrotechnics, and acrobatics aside, is likely to be an impersonal and emotionally alienating and draining experience. The partner is often treated as an object, an extension of the somatic narcissist, a kind of toy, a warm, pulsating vibrator. And therefore makes it very easy for him to retreat. Narcissist is self-sufficient in everything. Narcissist doesn't need any other people. He doesn't need emotions. He doesn't need sex. He's totally self-sufficient. And so if he cannot get sex from out, or doesn't want to get sex from outside, it's okay. He can supply his own sex. His inside is the outside. The outside is his inside. Pain is love. Not connected. Is love. Love is pain. You know, everything is everything. So, DSM, which is the kind of kink that involves humiliation, that gives a narcissist pleasure because of humiliation. There is element here of dominance, converting the woman to a prostitute, humiliating her, punishing her. Narcissist is the outcome of a woman who tortured him. He wants to punish all women. He's a misogynist. He hates women. They do, listen, hostage them. And then they use the incapacitation of the victim to inflict severe pain and damage, non-consensual in many cases. Or coprophagia, using feces for sex play. Well, that happens to be medically very dangerous to oneself and to others. It's also out of bounds and beyond the pale. Absolutely anything can be a sexual object. Absolutely anything can be an object of desire. And absolutely anything can create sexual arousal and excitation. When I say anything, I mean anything. A roll of toilet paper, a ski outfit, a latex glove, the heel of a woman's shoe, the woman's foot, her nose, absolutely everything.
Being unwashed.
Sexual arousal and excitation. The overwhelming vast majority of humanity are fetishes. Even when you meet a woman, and the thing is that, as I said, fetishism is virtually unlimited. So you can have people who are attracted to elements or components or ingredients that are unusual. It is not their attraction to a specific element that is unusual. It is the element that is unusual. The fact that they are attracted to something specific is not unusual. This is the rule. That's the common state. It's just that their choice of what to be attracted to is unusual. But if you read, I therefore don't think that there's anything special in narcissists dealing with fetishes. Maybe something special in the specific fetishes that narcissists choose, which reflect their For example, need for objectification, or need for novelty seeking, adventures, suppose a ski guy, or need for utter and total surrender. Is when you become a pet. Pets are owned, domesticated, controlled, and slaughtered. The fetish per se should be, all the textbooks should be written exactly opposite, exactly reverse. Until they find the right woman, body part, object, their active pedophilia is much higher with narcissists and psychopaths. Because they regard the children as an extension of themselves, so they're actually having sex with themselves, because they think they are actually educating the child or doing the child a favor, introducing the child to sex, because they believe that the child needs some kind of special protection. Because, it's endless. Very big risk with narcissists and psychopaths. With narcissists and psychopaths.
And they cast their intimate partner as their mother, so therefore they're siblings with their own child.
The minute inappropriate behavior begins to show up, the kind you described, in the bathroom and so on, this must be cause for serious alert. Because it's a slippery slope. The narcissist starts by entering the shower when the child is naked, and before you know it, he's having sex with the child. In the case of narcissists, psychopaths, there's no impulse control, no boundaries, no limits, no obedience to rules, no. So there you cut it the minute there is the first hint of inappropriate behavior. Not with normal people. With normal, healthy people, conversation would do. Listen, you embarrass the child. It's okay. Child may misunderstand what you're doing. It's okay. You can talk to healthy, normal people. No need for alarm. But with narcissists and psychopaths, you aggressively defend the child. You have to aggressively protect the child. And not with individual functions, but with social functions. The majority of animals, actually, don't have brains, or they have very small brains. But these animals are not social animals. They live individually, or their societies are very rudimentary. The brain had evolved to cope with social cues, social interactions, social give and take, and social exchange. And this is exactly where narcissism is an epic fail, a total failure. Narcissists don't necessarily fail as individuals. Many narcissists are very self-efficacious. Some of them become pillars of the society, chief executive officers or presidents of countries.
Start a
But
cult?
narcissists always fail in social interactions. Even when they construct a team around them, the team implodes. When they have a family, they end up divorcing. When they establish companies and businesses, they end up bankrupt. We don't have to look far. Narcissists are very bad at working, cohabiting, collaborating, co-opting, cooperating, and especially rigging other people. The narcissist realizes that. He knows that. So what he does, he conducts opinion polls. He crowdsources his mind. He outsources his ego functions. He vacates himself. He empties himself. And he invites everyone around him to tell him who he is, what he should feel, what his mood should be. This is called narcissistic supply. The narcissist is an incarnated public opinion poll, a hive mind.
Oh my God, so that's the town hall live, isn't it? And that really explains it.
Between the narcissist in and out. There's no external and internal. He internalizes external objects. The narcissist merges seamlessly with his environment, but not in a good way, not via socially acceptable means. He doesn't sublimate his drives and urges and so on. He merges with his environment by not existing, by absenting himself, especially emotionally, but also absenting himself cognitively. He has cognitive deficits, such as grandiosity. Narcissist reality testing is impaired because he refuses to exist as a separate, autonomous, boundaried entity within reality. He simply dilutes himself in reality. He becomes a wave, a frequency, a cloud of molecules.
Scotland, anyone? So, the schism between a guy whose pregnant wife has got dirt rash, he gleefully announced. So he hasn't been able to build at his own house one bathroom or toilet in over a year, but he's going to start a worldwide series of nature camps with children and chainsaws and grandparent volunteers. I cannot forget that. I'm sure to be a copyright strike to use that old pedophile on the walking frame from American Dad, is it? Or is he on Family Guy? You know the one. Ah, Scotland. Holy shit.
You say to yourself, I'm going to talk to my best friend. I'm going to talk to a therapist. I'm going to talk to my clergyman. I'm going to talk to a priest. I'm going to talk to my grandma. And using their feedback, using their input, using their advice, their tips, their wisdom, their accumulated life experience, I'm going to get it right. And I'm going to get it right in the sense that I'm going to get along better with people. I'm going to become socially more efficacious or self-efficacious. I'm going to obtain more favorable outcomes within my social milieu, at work, with my friends, in my family. That's how you, empathic people, define getting it right. The narcissist has a totally different definition of getting it right. When the narcissist says, I'm going to get it right, the narcissist means, I'm going to get an answer that supports and buttresses my grandiosity, that sits well with my fantastic inflated view of myself. I'm going to get an answer that is going to cement my self-image. In other words, the narcissist exercises something called confirmation bias. But the narcissist fine-tunes this self-image and self-perception by approaching as many people as he can and trying to recruit them to become sources of narcissistic supply. And this is why I keep comparing narcissism to a missionary religion. It's like the Catholic missionaries who went to Africa and tried to convert the poor cannibalistic tribesmen, or went to the Pacific or to Africa or to Asia and tried to convert the natives, the locals, to Christianity. It's the same with the narcissist. He tries to convert everyone around him to a source of supply, to provide him with information which will support his view of himself and of the world around him, not information that will allow him to better cope with reality, not information that will allow him to become a better, more empathic person, not information that will render him more helpful, more supportive, more agreeable, more fun to be with. No, none of this. Information that will support his view, his preordained, preconceived, predetermined view of himself. And this reminds me of a movie. In the film The Beaver, there's a character. The protagonist is played by Mel Gibson. The character suffers from depression, and he latches on to a tattered puppet. He has a puppet, and it's very, torn apart and everything. It's a very old puppet, in the shape of a beaver. And he communicates exclusively through the puppet, through this doll, through this, toy, in effect. The beaver is everything that its ostensible master is not. So the beaver is everything that Mel Gibson is not. He is daring, he's creative, he's exuberant, he's omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's gregarious, he's resourceful, charismatic, and charming. That's the toy, the beaver, the tattered puppet, not Mel Gibson, who ostensibly owns the beaver. The beaver is also a good father, a good chief executive officer, and good company all around. In short, the beaver is the reification the physical manifestation of the protagonist's false self. When Mel Gibson's wife, Jodie Foster, I can only dream, when his wife, Jodie Foster, confronts him, having exposed his confabulations, and having insisted that he must let go of the contraption, she tells him, you must let go of the beaver. It's not healthy. It's making you sick. The beaver rages at her. He asserts the superiority, invincibility, and brilliance. So, when Jodie Foster tries to talk to Mel Gibson, it's the beaver who talks to her. The beaver responds to her, not Mel Gibson. And the beaver says, I'm superior, I'm invincible, I'm brilliant. He rages, the beaver rages. The depressive Walter is the Mel Gibson character. The true self is derided by the beaver, mocked as a dysfunctional wreck, utterly dependent on the former's ministrations and the interference the beaver runs on behalf of Walter. The film ends unrealistically, with Walter mutilating his body, literally, in order to rid himself of the domineering and all-pervasive appendage, the beaver. I'm saying unrealistically because narcissists never succeed in resuscitating the dilapidated and crushed and ossified and wounded true self. The narcissist is his false self. Walter is the beaver. In real life, Walter should have been devoured and consumed by the beaver. But then, of course, we would not have a typical syrupy, happy-ending Hollywood movie, would we? Both the true self and the false self depend on the gaze of other people, depend on being seen. The false self relies on adulation, on attention, on narcissistic supply for the maintenance of the precarious, confabulated, fantastic, grandiose, and counterfactual narrative that is the narcissist's persona, his mask, his public face. So without people around, the narcissist fades and vanishes, like the alleged photographs of ghosts. Without a constant flow of high-quality input and feedback, without the adulating, admiring gaze, the narcissist crumbles like a house of cards, like a cloud of dust. The narcissist resorts to a variety of dysfunctional, self-destructive and self-defeating behaviors and defense mechanisms to prevent this outcome. So similarly and equally, the true self needs a loving gaze. The false self needs an admiring gaze, an adulating gaze. The true self needs a loving gaze to sustain itself. Another person's love serves two purposes. It confirms the existence of the true self as a lovable object and lays the groundwork and facilitates the necessary and sufficient conditions of self-love. You can't really love yourself if no one loves you. I can tell you from personal experience. It allows the true self to perceive the existence of a safe base, loving and holding other. And such insight is the very foundation of empathy. So, do the false self and the true self ever fight it out? Is it like David versus Goliath? Good versus evil? The beaver versus Walter? Well, no. Alas, they never do. The false self is concocted by the narcissist to fend off pain, to avoid hurt. It's a form of hurt aversion mechanism. It is a perfect, impenetrable, impermeable shield. It's a cocoon. The false self rewards the narcissist by flooding him with warm, fuzzy, exhilarating feelings. And it sustains the narcissist's delusions and fantasies. The false self is the narcissist's dream come true. In other words, as far as the narcissist is concerned, the false self is adaptive, it's functional. The narcissist is emotionally invested in the false self, and he despises the true self for having failed to cope with the exigencies and vicissitudes of the narcissist's life. So, kiddos and kiddos replaces the narcissist's true self, replaces it, substitutes for it. And it is intended to shield the narcissist from pain and hurt and narcissistic injury and mortification. And it does this by self-imputing omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, godlike attributes. The narcissist pretends that his false self is real, and he demands that other people affirm this confabulation, confirm this lie. He wants other people to tell him your false self is not false, it's real. The false self reinterprets information in a flattering or socially acceptable light, and also imitates and emulates normal emotions and empathy. See, so many functions. How can the narcissist get rid of the false self? The narcissist can no more get rid of a false self than you can get rid of your true self. And so this is why many people compare narcissism to demon possession. I have a whole video dedicated to this question about demon possession, medieval morality plays, and so on and so forth. But the phrase demon possession, it was used in the Middle Ages. They didn't have psychology at that time. So they didn't call it narcissistic personality disorder. They called it demon possession. But they were describing the same phenomena. They were describing the same clinical signs and symptoms. They were describing the same constellated syndrome. They didn't call it narcissism. They didn't call it a personality disorder. They didn't pretend to be scientists. They believed in God. Their language consisted of God, demons, devil. These were their language element, linguistic elements. And they used the only language they had lying around, to describe what they had seen, and what they had seen was a bit alien, a lot abnormal, out of the range of their typical pedestrian day-to-day quotidian experience. They didn't know how to cope with it. They didn't know how to describe it. It was so out of this world, so supernatural and paranormal in some ways, that they called it demon possession. You see, there's a concept in mysticism and the paranormal. It's called tulpa. Tulpa is a being or object which is created by projecting spiritual and mental powers. There was a movement called Theosophy. It was very dominant in the 20th century, in the first half of the 20th century. And Theosophy borrowed, as it borrowed many other things, it borrowed the concept of tulpa from Tibetan Buddhism. And in Tibetan it's not called tulpa, it's called sprulpa. Of course, sprulpa and the transition to Western mysticism became tulpa. At any rate, in Tibetan it means emanation, manifestation. And it's a type of imaginary friend, actually. You will it into being. You have a very strong wish to have an imaginary friend, and then it comes into being. You manifest it. You make it happen. And this imaginary friend, the tulpa, is sentient, it's intelligent, and it's relatively autonomous. And it has many, many features of the false self. There was a spiritualist, her name was Alexandra David Neal, and she claimed to have observed these practices in Tibet. And she described tulpas as magic formations generated by a powerful concentration of thought. She believed that tulpas have a mind of their own. She said, once the tulpa is endowed with enough vitality to be capable of playing the part of a real being, it tends to free itself from its maker's control.
Laddo's a country boy at heart. But ever since he moved to the big smoke, he spends more time on these four wheels.
Than those four wheels.
It doesn't mean he loves his car any less.
Still love you, Betty!
This, say Tibetan occultists, happens nearly mechanically. Just as the child, when his body is completed and able to live apart, leaves his mother's womb. So, giving birth to the talpa, or the tulpa, I prefer to call it tulpa, although the correct pronunciation is talpa. I call it tulpa because in original Tibetan, it's closer to original Tibetan. So, the talpa is compared to a baby, to a newborn. It's a process of birth. And similarly, the narcissist gives birth to the false self. The narcissist is a creator of the false self and the mother of the false self. Remember, leaves his mother's womb. So, giving birth to the talpa or the tulpa, I prefer to call it tulpa, although the correct pronunciation is talpa. Born. It's a process of birth. similarly, the narcissist gives birth to the false self. The narcissist is a creator of the false self and the mother of the false self. Remember this when we come a bit later to the issue of feminine and masculine. The narcissist is the mother. The false self is a baby, and it's a perfect baby. It's brilliant, it's omnipotent, it's omniscient. The narcissist gives birth to God. And in this sense, narcissism is a bit Gnostic. Gnosticism describes a world with two deities. Gnosticism is not monotheistic. There is a demiurge, and there is God. And in this parable, this metaphoric mythology, the narcissist is God, and he gives birth to a demiurge.
Yes, Scout ahoy.
And so there's one deity giving birth to another deity. We'll come to all this a bit later. The Western occult understanding of Talpa or Tulpa is therefore a kind of rewriting of modern psychological understanding of true and false self. And in Western occultism, there's another concept called thought form. Now, before they came up with the word thought form, there was another thing called ectoplasm. Ectoplasm was discredited. Ectoplasm was